Sunday is my favorite day, or at least, it used to be. I wake up early, open the windows, let the smell of coffee drift through the house. It's automatic. It's the ritual that keeps everything running, as if love, too, had a routine. Daniel arrives first, as always, still in his church suit. Eric comes next, talking loudly on the phone, arguing about numbers. Melissa walks in laughing, with Hazel bouncing in her arms, yelling, "Grandma, I brought you flowers." Flowers probably picked from the neighbor's garden, but they're the only ones that make me cry without sadness. At the table, everything is abundant. Dishes steaming, fresh juice, laughter, the clinking of silverware. They sit, and I stay standing, serving everyone. Daniel jokes, "Mom, one day we'll take you to a restaurant so you don't have to cook." "No need, son. This is my restaurant." Everyone laughs, and so do I, but deep down, I know that if I ever really stopped cooking, no one would come. As I clear the plates, a strange pang hits my chest. Quick, like a message your body tries to send, and you pretend not to read. I rest my hand on the counter, mask the scare, smile. Hazel runs up to hug me. "You okay, Grandma?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired." But it wasn't tiredness. Sometimes the body speaks and we stay quiet, so we don't ruin Sunday lunch. The symptoms began, slowly. A different kind of fatigue, a dizziness that lingered too long, a strange nausea in the afternoon, for no reason. Before I continue, I want to thank this channel Buried by Family for allowing me to share this part of my life with you. This channel needs your support to keep bringing more stories like this one. Please, like and subscribe. It is really important. So, I mentioned it to Daniel once, while he was talking about his new project. "Son, I've been feeling a little different. I think I should see a doctor." He didn't even look up. "Mom, you haven't been sleeping well. Do some yoga, relax. You carry the world on your shoulders." I tried again with Eric. "You know I've been having these aches. Double quotes. Mom, that's just age, and you've always worked too hard. Now that you're retired, your body's not used to the rest." Melissa was more direct. "Mom, you just need a vacation. We could take a family trip, remember? You pay for the resort, I'll organize everything." I laughed, out of habit. But inside, something quietly collapsed, like an old piece of furniture. Those polite, quick answers that really meant, "I don't have time for this." That night, I sat on the edge of the bed and promised myself I'd make an appointment. But I didn't. Tomorrow was Eric's birthday, and I had to find him a gift. Then Sunday lunch, then the weekend, then life. Those who've always cared for everyone else take longer to realize when they need someone to care for them. It's funny how love can turn into a spreadsheet. Each of my children owes me financially and emotionally, yet none of them ever remembers to pay. Daniel needed help to remodel his house. Eric made a bad investment, and I covered the loss. Melissa lost her job, and I paid off her credit card just this once. They always thank me, of course, with a kiss on the forehead, a message in the family group chat. "Mom, you're the pillar of everything. Nothing works without you." And I believe it, because every mother wants to believe it. But when I try to talk about myself, my voice doesn't seem to cross the room. The doctor said I should get some tests done. "We'll talk about that later, Ma. Look at this video of Hazel dancing." I laugh, because it's impossible not to laugh at Hazel. But my body feels heavy, and the laughter comes out halfway. To love is to serve. Until the day you realize no one gets up to serve you a glass of water anymore. I woke up on a Saturday with a strange, deep pain. It was as if something inside me had come loose. I went to the kitchen to make coffee, and the floor seemed to move. I leaned on the table, tried to breathe, but the air slipped away. I grabbed the phone and dialed Daniel. Voicemail. Eric. Voicemail. Melissa. Voice message. Try it again. Nothing. The numbers on the screen started to dance, and before my body gave in, a memory surfaced. Grace, my neighbor, my friend, the only one who always shows up when everyone else disappears. I managed to call her. Her voice was the only steady sound in the middle of the void. "Stay where you are, Ruth. I'm coming." She arrived before I could collapse, drove me to the hospital calm, in a way she wasn't. "You should have called sooner. I thought it was just low blood pressure." You always think that, until you fall for real. That day, I realized that blood ties aren't always the ones that save you. Sometimes it's the neighbor next door. The room smelled of disinfectant and longing. The monitor beeped in rhythm, almost mocking me. Grace stayed late. My kids didn't come. The phone blinked with lukewarm messages. Daniel, I've got a meeting. Mom, I'll stop by tomorrow. Eric, hang in there. Okay, I'm dealing with something. Melissa, Mom, let me know when they discharge you. Okay. The doctor was kind. We need to investigate, Mrs. Adams. It might be something simple, but it requires attention. Is it serious? I'd rather not downplay it. I looked at my phone again. No, we're on our way. Just the hum of the air conditioner and the echo of my own breathing. Grace came back with a bottle of water and held my hand. You've given the world to them, Ruth. Maybe it's time to keep a piece for yourself. I smiled weakly. I just wish they'd call. Sometimes the worst kind of loneliness answers to the name family. In the morning, the nurse came in smiling. Good news, you're going home. Is someone coming to pick me up? Is there someone to call? I stayed silent. I sent a short message to the family group chat. I've been discharged. Can someone come get me? Silence. Then, sorry Mom, today's tough. Lots of meetings. Traffic's awful. I waited until late afternoon. No familiar car stopped at the hospital door. I took a cab. The driver was a young woman, maybe 30. Did you have company at the hospital? I did. A friend. That's nice. I smiled, but my voice cracked. Yeah, it is. At home, I set the hospital bag on the couch. The house was silent, but it wasn't peace. It was absence. When I came home, I understood. Sometimes the body returns before the soul does. On Sunday, the noise of family filled the emptiness again. Hazel ran up and hugged my legs. Grandma, did you miss me? More than you know. Daniel brought wine. Eric talked about a new business. Melissa took photos for her posts. And me, as always, I served the table. No one asked about the hospital. No one asked about the tests. Between one dish and another, I tried. The doctor suggested more tests. He said it could be serious. Daniel laughed, without malice. Mom, doctors see illness in everyone. Eric added, don't get into that mindset. Mom, it's just age. Melissa chimed in. You look great. Look how much energy you have. I smiled. But something in me broke quietly, and for good. Sometimes you realize your sickness isn't of the body, but of the lack of care. The following week, I scheduled an appointment. It was early, raining. I couldn't drive. I asked for help. Message to Daniel. Son, can you drive me to the doctor tomorrow? I'm not feeling well. Impossible. Mom, closing week. To Eric. Just drop me off and pick me up later. Meetings all day. Mom. To Melissa. Honey, I can pick you up after. That way, you won't be late. Mom, I've got a shoot tomorrow. It's important for work. I took a deep breath, grabbed my umbrella, and went alone. The doctor looked at me with that kind of compassion no one wants to see. He ordered more tests, explained the risks, talked about treatment. I wrote everything down in a small notebook. Then I left, bought some bread, and went home. In the family group chat, they were sending videos of Hazel at school. I replied with a heart emoji. No one asked about the appointment. That's when I began to understand that it wasn't me getting old, it was their love that was fading. The absences started small, almost imperceptible. Like when you take a picture off the wall, and at first, you can still see its outline. The emptiness takes time to look like emptiness. Daniel used to call every day at lunch. It wasn't a long conversation, but it made me feel remembered. One day he forgot, then another. By the third week, I realized silence had become the new routine. Eric used to come by on Wednesdays for dinner. He'd say he couldn't stand fast food anymore. All of a sudden, he started having late-night meetings. Wednesdays became empty and cold, like his untouched plate at the table. Melissa used to be my confidant. We talked about everything: clothes, work, plans, Hazel, but lately, she only called when she needed something. Mom, the studio rent's late. Mom, my card got blocked. Mom, do you have the accountant's number? And I gave. I always gave. But one day I realized her mom was just the preface to a request. The worst thing isn't when they forget you, it's when they remember you for the wrong reasons. One Saturday, it rained. The house smelled of bread and coffee, and I decided to make their favorite dinner: fresh pasta, salad, and the chocolate cake Hazel always asks for. I sent a message to the family group: dinner at 7. If you want to come. No response. I waited until 8. By 9, I ate alone. The TV kept me company without sound. I left the dishes covered with a cloth, as if the smell of food could bring someone back. At 10, my phone buzzed. Daniel, sorry, Mom, I ended up staying late at the office. Melissa, today was insane. I'll stop by tomorrow. Eric didn't even see the message. I swear. I swear. That phrase that covers every truth that's missing. On Sunday, Grace came by. She brought real flowers, not emoji ones. Your house smells like loneliness, Ruth. I smiled, pretending it was nothing. Smells like cake. I made too much. She looked at me, her eyes deep and kind. Cake can be left over. People shouldn't be. Later, I sat on the porch. The wind made the curtains dance, and the clock seemed to tick louder than usual. I picked up the knitting I'd been making for Hazel. The blue yarn was tangled with the same knot in my throat, and I thought, would they even notice if I disappeared for a day? Not as a cry for attention, but as a way to test my own existence. That night, I closed the windows and climbed the stairs slowly. Before going to bed, I sent one last short message to the group. Good night, my loves. Take care. No one replied. But an hour later, a notification popped up. Melissa had liked the message. Just liked it. And that's when I understood. Modern absence comes with reactions, not presence. The little absences are like cracks in a wall. At first, they seem like nothing. Then, one day, the ceiling collapses. The house was silent. That kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from lack. The living room clock read 3 in the afternoon. Autumn light streamed through the windows, gilding the furniture, as if time were trying to disguise abandonment with beauty. I decided to open the hallway closet. Inside, between blankets and old boxers, was the family album. Brown leather cover, worn corners, the smell of dust and memory. I sat on the floor, crossed my legs, and opened the first page. The first photo was my favorite. Daniel as a baby, holding his father's finger. Me, 28, hair tied back, wearing a smile time never managed to reproduce. In pen, the caption read, "Our beginning." I ran my fingers over the image, as if I could feel that moment again. Then came Eric, laughing, face smeared with ice cream, wearing a shirt I had sewn myself. Melissa, tiny, with a huge bow in her hair and that curious look that still lives in her eyes. Each page was proof of love, of effort, of presence. And with each photo, I asked myself, where did we lose each other? Halfway through the album, a series of Christmas photos, all in red pajamas, wrapping paper everywhere, the dog asleep by the fireplace. I remembered the smell of cinnamon, the laughter, the crooked tree Hazel had tried to decorate by herself. That year, Daniel raised his glass and said, "Mom, you're the heart of this house. May we never be without you." I smiled at the memory, but sitting there alone, the words sounded like irony. Maybe what's missing in their homes now is the heart that was always here. I found a more recent photo, my 59th birthday. Everyone at the table, laughter, cake, candles. In the picture, I'm smiling, but now I notice something I hadn't before. No one's looking at me. Everyone's staring at their phones, their glasses, themselves. The only one looking straight at me is Hazel, in the corner, her face smeared with frosting. She's the only one who still sees me. I turned the page and found something I didn't remember saving. An old drawing Melissa made as a child. A crayon sketch of a mother and daughter holding hands, with the words, "Me and Mommy, best friends forever." I folded the paper back in, but couldn't close the album. Memory has a cruel trick. It shows you what was beautiful just to remind you of what will never be again. In the living room, the sound of rain began to tap against the windows. Grace texted me, "Storm's coming. Want me to stop by?" I replied, "No need. I have company tonight." I closed the album slowly, but before putting it away, I left one photo aside. Me, Hazel, and her 6th birthday cake. Her smile was the same as mine as a child, the kind that still believed love was simple. I placed the photo on my nightstand, as a reminder that not everything is lost. There's still a piece of my story worth saving. Sometimes, what hurts most isn't what's forgotten, it's what's remembered too late. The following days were a blur of tests, needles, and paperwork. I came home exhausted but certain of one thing. I needed to know what was happening to me. I sent a message to the family group. "The doctor wants to see me with the results tomorrow." Silence. Then, "Good luck, Mom. Let me know later. Melissa, it's gonna be fine. Eric, trust God." Daniel, no one asked where, what time, or if I needed a ride. At the doctor's office, he spoke, and I wrote down every word. He wanted more tests. "It's not urgent," he said, "but it needs to be investigated." I left alone and bought flowers for myself. The kind Hazel usually brings me. No one walks beside you when the road leads through your own body. Grace stopped by for coffee. Do they know about the tests? They do. But I don't want to worry them. Ruth, worrying is part of loving. If they don't worry, they don't care. I pretended not to hear. Speaking ill of my children feels like speaking ill of my own body. But that night, staring at my phone, I wondered how many times they called me just to talk without needing something. I couldn't remember a single one. A child's silence can weigh on a mother's chest like stone. It was Thursday. I woke up with a metallic taste in my mouth, the world spinning. My hand shook as I tried to make coffee. The phone fell to the floor. I called Grace. Again, she came over in her slippers, asking nothing. Just held my arm and said, "Hospital now." In the car, I closed my eyes to fake courage. At the hospital, they gave me a bed. I trembled. When you show up alone at a hospital, even the doorman can tell something's wrong with your life. The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Short, automatic messages. "Mom, I'm on my way." "Daniel, a gentle lie, stay strong." "Eric, I'm praying for you." "Melissa, no one came." The nurse smiled politely. "Big family, huh?" "Noisy," I said, smiling back. But in that room, it was just me and the steady drip of the 4. Some illnesses start in the blood, others come from the lack of it. In the morning, the doctor came in. "We'll discharge you, but you need to rest." "Can I drive?" "Better not." "Is someone coming to pick you up?" I smiled without answering. I waited until lunchtime. No familiar cars. "No, I'm here." I took a cab. The driver, a woman in her 30s, talked about her son, how he called every night to make sure she'd eaten dinner. She said, "He's a golden boy." I said, "You're lucky." When you leave the hospital alone, you realize the hardest part of the illness is coming home to an empty house. On Sunday, as if nothing had happened, the house was full again. The smell of roast chicken, Hazel dancing in the living room. They ate, laughed, scrolled through their phones. I mentioned it between bites. "The doctor thinks it's something that needs more testing." Eric tapped the table lightly. "Don't let them scare you, Mom. Doctors love to exaggerate." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. Strong mind, strong body." Melissa smiled, raising her phone. "You look great, Mom. Let's take a picture. Look how pretty you are." I smiled for the photo. But later, looking at the image on the screen, I thought, who is that woman who looks so alone in the middle of her own family? In some family photos, it's the absence that smiles at the center. By the end of the week, Grace came by again. "Did the kids pick you up when you were discharged?" "They couldn't. They're busy with work." She sighed. "They work hard not to see you." We laughed, but it hurt. She helped me organize my pills into a daily box, one step at a time. Ruth, yes, one step at a time. In the quiet of the night, I thought about next Sunday. They'd come, like always, and like always, I'd do everything. Routine is the best makeup for abandonment. On Friday, Melissa texted Mume, "How about a resort in April? We all need a break. You pay, I'll handle the reservations." I replied with a heart emoji. Not because I agreed, but because I was tired of explaining. Grace asked if I was going. "Maybe. They seemed to want to be close." She raised an eyebrow. "Or, they don't want to be far from your credit card." "Grace, sorry. But one day you'll have to choose who loves you and who just uses you. And what if one day you realize that the love that gives everything only taught others to give nothing back?" There's a moment before a diagnosis when hope still tries to disguise itself as optimism. You know something's wrong, but you pretend a nice dinner can fix it. That's what I did. I spent the whole morning cooking by myself, the smell of garlic sautéing, the clatter of pans, the new tablecloth I'd saved for a special occasion. This seemed like one. I asked them to come early. "I want to talk to you about some personal things," I wrote in the group chat. None of them asked what. By 6, the table was set, crystal glasses aligned, silver cutlery polished, candles burning softly. A simple dinner, but filled with intention. 7 o'clock, nothing. The sauce was thickening too much, the wine already open. I sent a message, "Are you on your way?" Daniel, stuck in traffic. "Mom, don't start without me." Eric, something came up, but I'll be there soon. Melissa, running late, but I'm coming. I put the dishes in the oven to keep them warm. While waiting, I sat at the head of the table. The ticking clock was the only guest who arrived on time. 8:45, the doorbell never rang. The smell of food began turning into memory. I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it. A toast, alone, to the health that's fading, and the love that lingers. I smiled, but the glass trembled in my hand. I turned on the TV for company. The news, deaths, politics, accidents, nothing about mothers forgotten at set tables. 9:30. The family group chat lit up again. Mom, can't make it today. I'll make it up to you tomorrow. Crazy day here. Let's reschedule. Ugh. Mom, today was chaos. You understand, right? I understand. I understand too well. So much that I'm tired of understanding alone. I picked up my phone and recorded a voice message I never sent. Kids, I just wanted to have dinner with you. Nothing important. Just company. But it's okay. I saved a plate for each of you. I deleted it before sending. Speaking hurts more when no one's listening. I turned off the living room lights, leaving only the candles burning. Their flames trembled, as if ashamed to illuminate an empty table. I took my plate and went out to the balcony, ate slowly, watching the dark street. A neighbor walked by with her dog and waved. Alone tonight, Ruth. I smiled. No, having dinner with my memories. She laughed, thinking I was joking, but it was the truest thing I'd said in a long time. When I finished, I washed the dishes. The serving bowls were still full. I packed everything into containers, labeled them with their names, Daniel, Eric, Melissa, and placed them in the fridge. The next day, they were all still there. No one came. The sauce had hardened. So had the love. The table I had prepared for them turned into a mirror. And what I saw reflected there was the end of whatever was left of us. After that dinner, the house began to smell strange. Not like spoiled food, like something that had ended but hadn't yet found the courage to leave. I spent the following days trying to fill the hours, reading, sewing, watching TV. But everything I did seemed to echo with the sound of absence. On Thursday, the intercom rang. A delivery. A huge bouquet, expensive flowers, golden card, to the best mom in the world. Signed, Daniel. The flowers were beautiful, but soulless. I took them out of the plastic and placed them in a vase. For a moment, the scent filled the room, and with it came a kind of quiet anger. It was the same perfume that filled the air every time he didn't show up and sent flowers instead. Grace walked in, carrying groceries. Who sent you those? Daniel. She sniffed them and frowned. Smells like guilt. We laughed, but she was right. The next day, the mailman brought a box. A printed card, no human handwriting. Get well soon, Mom. We're thinking of you. From Eric and family. Inside, expensive chocolates, but they tasted like distance. Sweet at first, bitter in the end. I set the box on the shelf. It sat there, like a decoration made of regret. Sunday, a message from Melissa Mome. Weren't those flowers I sent last week gorgeous? I replied. They were, sweetheart. They're still alive, but I didn't say they were already starting to wilt. That night, I sat in my armchair and looked at the vase. The petals fell one by one, slowly. They seemed to whisper, "You're alone." I picked up the bouquet and took it outside, buried the flowers in the garden. It was the first time I ever buried something that still smelled good. On Monday, Grace came by again. She brought hot soup, fresh bread, and a new tablecloth. Are you eating properly? I am now. She looked at the empty vase. Where are the flowers? I sent them back to the sender. She smiled, understanding exactly what I meant. That evening, I decided to return the kindness. I took 3 white envelopes. In each, I placed a simple note of thanks. Thank you for the gift. The flowers died quickly, but the gesture survived. Mom, I dropped them in the mailbox, not to hurt, to remind, because sometimes silence teaches less than a gentle truth. When the mailman took them, I felt a small relief, but real. It was the first time in a long while that I gave something back. It wasn't about the flowers, it was about boundaries. That night, I texted Grace, "The flowers are gone. The smell remains, but it's okay." She replied, "The smell leaves when you open the window." So I went to the window, opened it. The wind came in strong, carrying away the last of the guilt that wasn't mine to keep. Some gifts don't arrive to comfort, they arrive to quiet a conscience. But when you learn not to hold on to what doesn't heal you, the silence finally changes owners. The doctor was blunt. No small talk, no metaphors, no anesthesia. It's a chronic condition, Mrs. Adams. It requires ongoing monitoring and long-term treatment, strong medication, possible side effects. The words stuck in my throat. He kept talking, and all I could think was, who's going to come with me to the appointments? But I didn't say it. I took the envelope, thanked him, and left. In the parking lot, I looked around, families hugging, people holding each other's hands, and me, holding a yellow folder and a prescription that felt like a sentence. The hardest part isn't hearing the name of the illness, it's realizing no one will be there to hear it with you. On Sunday, the house was full again. Daniel talked about a new investment, Eric about the office renovation, Melissa was recording stories for her followers, Hazel played under the table with her dolls and breadcrumbs. I tried to speak. The doctor explained the treatment. It'll take months. Daniel cut me off. Mom, just text me later. Okay, I need to deal with this business thing, Eric added. But you're okay, right? Nothing serious, he said. It's delicate. Melissa interrupted. Don't talk about that in front of Hazel. I went quiet, and in the middle of all that noise, I finally understood the size of my loneliness. It's sad when family love comes with an expiration date for patience. I started treatment on a Tuesday. The pills were small but felt as heavy as the world. White, round, with names I couldn't pronounce. Every morning, I lined them up on the table, as if arranging my own fate. A glass of water, an empty stomach, and a sip of courage. By the second day came the nausea. By the third, the dizziness. My head ached, my body felt heavy. Grace came to check on me. Want me to stay here tonight? No need. I'll be fine. Ruth, being fine alone is what made you sick. She was right. But part of me still believed my children would notice eventually. The medicine started to heal my body and exposed the sickness of my soul. Grace stayed with me those first few days. Every time I swallowed a pill, she said the same thing. One step at a time. Ruth, one step at a time. But each step felt like climbing a mountain barefoot. My body no longer obeyed me, my head spun. The metallic taste reminded me that I was being treated, not cared for. That week, the doctor told me to keep my faith. I laughed. Faith in what? In the children, who kept forgetting me. In the test results that changed every week. Or, in the God I only remembered in emergencies. Grace invited me to a small chapel by the beach. It's not about religion, she said. It's about silence. I agreed to go. The chapel was simple, almost shy. Pale walls, wooden benches, the distant sound of the sea. No stained glass, no choir, just the scent of candles and salt in the air. I sat in the last pew. I didn't pray. I just sat there, breathing, looking at nothing, as if trying to decipher my own echo. Grace lit a candle, then handed me another. Light one too. What for? To remind yourself you're still here. The flame flickered, and for the first time in a long while, so did I. We left in silence. Outside, she asked, do you believe in miracles, Ruth? I used to, and now, I thought for a moment. Now, I believe in strength. Then that's miracle enough. On the way back, we stopped by the pharmacy to pick up more pills. While waiting in line, I saw a woman holding her elderly mother's hand. She helped her pay, adjusted her purse, smiled with patience. A small gesture, but it hurt, because that's what I wanted. That simple kind of love you don't have to beg for. At home, I left the pills on the table and stared at them. How many were there? 10, 15, didn't matter. The heaviest thing wasn't the medicine. It was the reason I had to take it alone. Grace said goodbye, promising to come back that night. Before leaving, she said, you're not alone, Ruth. I know it feels like it, but you're not. I nodded. But inside, the loneliness still felt more real than any promise. Later, I lit the candle I'd brought from the chapel. The flame danced slowly, and I noticed its light cast a shadow over the bottle of pills. It was symbolic faith and healing, sharing the same battlefield. I wanted to talk to God, but the words wouldn't come, so I wrote on a piece of paper, if I'm meant to stay, give me strength. If I'm meant to go, give me peace. Just don't let me become invisible before my time. I folded it and placed it beneath Hazel's framed photo. The next day, the nausea hit harder. As I tried to get up, my phone buzzed. A message from Melissa. Morning, Mom. Guess what? I got that dream trip. We're all going. I looked at the folded paper. The candle had burned all the way down. The flame was gone, but the prayer remained. Sometimes faith isn't believing everything will be fine. It's accepting that maybe the only thing left to save is your own soul. Some days, your body feels like a stranger living inside you. You wake up, look in the mirror, and realize someone's been left behind. Someone younger, livelier, more confident. but she doesn't answer anymore. That's how it was that morning. I got up slowly, the cold floor under my feet. The mirror reflected a face I didn't quite recognize. The dark circles were deeper, the hair thinner, the skin paler. But what scared me most wasn't the reflection, it was the eyes. They'd lost their light, and I'd always been a woman with bright eyes. I picked up my brush, trying to ignore the discomfort. But mirrors don't show mercy. They insist, they expose. I lowered my head and noticed my hands spotted, trembling, fragile. And I thought, these hands once held 3 children at once. These hands cooked, cleaned, paid bills, wiped tears, and now they can barely hold a cup. A lump rose in my throat. The brush fell from my fingers. Grace knocked on the door. "Can I come in?" I nodded, quickly wiping my eyes. She took one look at me and the mirror. "Rough day, a real one. Want to talk?" "I want to disappear." Grace stepped closer and, without asking, pulled the bedsheet off the bed and covered the mirror. "There. What's that supposed to be?" A visual pause. "Sometimes you have to stop looking at yourself to remember you still exist." I smiled faintly. Didn't know a mirror could hurt more than an illness. It shows what the heart's been hiding. We sat in silence for a while. She made me tea, and I watched the steam rise and dissolve into the air. The smoke seemed freer than I was. "You know what's funny, Grace?" "What?" "I spent my whole life making sure my kids never saw me weak, and now that I really am, they don't look at all." Grace squeezed my hand. "They got used to the fortress, but no one asks who repairs the cracks." After she left, I went back to the covered mirror, lifted the sheet. The reflection was still there, tired, but mine. I touched the cold glass lightly. "Hi, Ruth," I said softly, like greeting a stranger. "You're still there, aren't you?" The reflection didn't answer, but I felt something stir inside, maybe anger, maybe life. Sometimes those two come together. That night, I left the mirror uncovered. Before going to bed, I looked at it and made a promise. "You're going to change. Even if the face doesn't, the eyes will." I lay down with the faint sounds of the street outside, and the strange feeling of someone finally starting to see herself again, not as a mother, a patient, or a victim, but as a woman, one who still breathes, still feels, still has a name. The mirror doesn't show who we are, it shows what's left after everything's been taken. It was Sunday again. As I poured myself some tea, I heard low voices in the living room. Daniel said, "Do you think she still want to pay for that trip?" Eric replied, "Let's hope so. It's almost booked." Melissa laughed. "If she gets worse, we'll have to cancel. Imagine losing that money." Silence. Then Daniel again. "We should be prepared. If she dies, who gets what?" The cup almost slipped from my hand. I leaned against the wall so I wouldn't collapse. I could feel my illness pulsing in my veins, but it was a different kind of pain. Sometimes the heart stops for a few seconds, not from disease, but from disappointment. I walked back into the living room as if I'd heard nothing. Sat down, smiling. "You were talking about a trip. Sounds wonderful." Melissa beamed. "Yes, Mom. It'll be great for you, of course." I swallowed hard, like taking poison, and pretending it was medicine. Later, Grace came by, and I told her. She listened in silence, then said, "You've protected them too much. Now they treat your money like a living inheritance." I cried. "I don't want to hate them." "Then don't. Just stop funding them. Love doesn't die when you stop giving money. It simply reveals who only loved your wallet." A few days later, Melissa called, excited. "Mom, we're planning a longer trip so you can rest. It'll be great for your recovery. But the doctor said I shouldn't travel too far. We'll figure that out, Mom. Don't worry." Daniel texted, "Resort.com, weather, healthy food. It'll do you good." Eric added, "You can put it on your card. We'll settle later." I wanted to believe them. Maybe, I thought, they were trying to reconnect, but Grace wasn't convinced. "They didn't ask if there's a hospital there, Ruth. They just want me to rest. They just don't want you in the way." Selfish love always disguises itself as care, and almost gets away with it. The medicine started demanding its price. Dizziness, nausea, fever. One night, my body finally stopped pretending. I woke up on the living room floor. Grace appeared again, as if fate itself had a spare key to my door. "Get up slowly, Ruth. We're going to the hospital." This time, I didn't resist. I let her take me, my body heavy, my pride shattered. The doctor was firm. "The disease has progressed. You'll need constant monitoring and should avoid stress. No strong emotions." I thought. "Then I'll have to avoid my own children." Sometimes, the hardest treatment is staying away from the people who make you sick. 2 days later, they showed up. Daniel with a bouquet, Eric wearing an expression of rehearsed concern, Melissa holding her phone. Mom, what a scare. How are you feeling? We were just getting everything ready for the trip, you know. I looked at them and felt a strange mix of love, anger, and pity. They talked a lot, but asked very little. Did the doctor give you the final diagnosis? Eric asked. Yes. Is it something that could disable you? It could. Silence. Melissa glanced at her brothers. We'll need to talk about the bills later. That's when Grace walked in, steady as a storm. She's not talking about any of that today. Leave. They froze, startled by her tone. I closed my eyes. For the first time, someone had defended me. A family that doesn't protect you becomes an audience, and the audience rarely cries for you. The night began quietly. But midnight silence has a cruel way of stripping the varnish off things. When the world sleeps, guilt is the one that wakes. I tried to rest, but my body wouldn't listen. My head throbbed, the medicine weighed me down, and my heart beat unevenly like a broken drum. I got up, poured a glass of water, and walked to the living room. The whole house seemed to breathe with me. The clock ticked with a metallic insistence. I looked at the empty couch and, for a moment, imagined my children there, laughing, arguing, asking for coffee. But it was only memory pretending to be presence. I sat at the table and opened the notebook where I keep family recipes, picked up a pen and began to write. My children, if I ever failed as a mother, forgive me. Maybe I loved too much, cared too much, helped too much. Maybe I made your paths too easy. And because of that, maybe you forgot that I, too, get tired. The words came out slowly, as if heavier than the paper could bear. I don't want you to feel guilty. I just want you to remember that I exist beyond obligations, that I feel pain, fear, loneliness, that I'm still a person. The pen slipped from my hand. I cried quietly, not from anger, not from physical pain, but from realizing I'd spent my whole life apologizing for loving. Then, I heard a key turn in the door. Grace. She stepped in softly, wrapped in her robe, eyes full of concern. The light was on. I thought you were unwell. No, just writing. Can I see? I slid the notebook toward her, unable to speak. Grace read in silence. When she finished, she took a deep breath, then slowly tore the page out and threw it away. Grace. Enough, Ruth. It was for them to read someday. No, it was for you to keep blaming yourself, and that's enough. She sat beside me, resting her hand over mine. You've spent your whole life apologizing for existing, and when you finally need help, no one shows up. You don't owe anyone forgiveness, Ruth, only yourself for forgetting that you're human, too. I stared at her, eyes full of tears. I just wanted them to love me the way I loved them. Then start with yourself. Love yourself the way no one else ever did. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was a tired kind of peace, the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting the current. Grace stood, turned off the light, and said before leaving, "You're not the problem in your family, Ruth. You're proof that love without limits is what destroys the most." I stayed alone in the dark, but for the first time in a long while, the darkness didn't scare me. I folded the notebook, tucked it beneath my pillow, and thought, maybe tomorrow I'll start forgiving myself, too. Sometimes, the forgiveness we most need to ask for is from ourselves, for having mistaken love for total surrender. I woke to the sound of wind against the windows. A cold morning, the kind where the body longs for warmth and the soul aches for memory. I looked at the kitchen calendar. The little square for the day was marked with a blue heart, drawn by me, weeks ago. My birthday, 60 years old. The house was silent. No messages, no calls. At 8 a.m. The only happy birthday I got came from my bank app, offering me a special loan. I laughed softly. Maybe it was ironic, life offering me more debt when all I wanted was affection. I made coffee, poured 2 cups out of habit. The second one sat there, untouched, cooling, like everything else in my life lately. As the coffee lost its warmth, my phone buzzed, a notification from a promotions group. Then, silence again. Every hour, I glanced at the screen. Nothing. No mom. No I love you. Not even an emoji. By late morning, Grace showed up with a small cake and a crooked candle. You thought I'd forget. I thought everyone would. Not everyone. I still count. We laughed. We ate cake on the porch, the wind brushing against us, the sticky sweetness reminding me that there was still flavor left in small things. Grace turned on the radio, playing an old song, one I used to listen to with the kids, back when they were nothing but hallway laughter and echoes of joy. For a few minutes, I let myself close my eyes and pretend everything was still the same. By afternoon, the sun began to sink. The stretched shadows on the wall looked like slow clocks. I picked up the family album and sat in my armchair. I was almost dozing off when my phone buzzed. I looked quickly, my heart leaping. But it wasn't any of my children. It was Hazel. Her little voice came through, trembling, sweet, half-whispered. "Grandma, Mommy said you're sick. Are you okay?" I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just a little tired. Can I sing happy birthday to you? You remembered?" "Of course I did. You're my favorite grandma." Her laughter cut through my chest like sunlight. She sang, off-key, joyful, sincere. Halfway through, she stopped and said, "I wish I could give you a real hug. You just did, my love. You just did." After we hung up, I stared at the glowing phone screen. Grace walked in and found me quietly crying. "Did they call?" She did, and that was enough, wasn't it? I nodded, because yes, it was enough. True love doesn't need to come from everyone. It just needs to come from one heart that still remembers what tenderness feels like. That night, I lit a candle on the windowsill and made a wish. May Hazel never learn to love halfway. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't wish for my children to come back. I only wished that my granddaughter would never feel what I felt today. The silence of my children aged me 10 years, but my granddaughter's small, pure voice that gave me the will to live 10 more. The hospital has a kind of silence that makes you hear everything you've tried to quiet your whole life. The steady beep of the monitor kept time with my regrets. Grace came every day, sometimes just to sit beside me without saying a word. My children sent cold messages. "Mom, feeling better. Let us know when you're discharged." What did the doctor say again? None of them stayed longer than 20 minutes when they did show up, and they spoke as if their presence were a favor. "You need to stay positive, Mom. We'll take you to that resort. Remember, everything's ready." I looked at them and thought, I'm not sure if this trip is a gift or an escape. Love that comes with a timer isn't a visit, it's a check-in. One night, I woke to voices outside my room. The walls were thin, nothing stayed secret. It was Daniel. "We need to figure this out soon. If she gets worse, who handles the finances?" Eric replied, "Everything's still under her name. The house, the beach place, the investments." Melissa added, "We could ask her to sign a few simple documents, just to make things easier." I closed my eyes and held back the tears. It wasn't anger. It was realization. They hadn't come to visit me. They'd come to take inventory. Some people wait for you to get better. Others just want to know how long they have to wait. The next morning, Grace showed up with coffee from my favorite cafe. She sat down, took my hand, and said, "Ready to stop being so nice? Grace, it's not revenge, it's protection. They're my children, and you're your only mother." I took a deep breath. For the first time, I seriously considered protecting myself from them. Grace called a trusted lawyer friend. He came quietly, spoke gently, and explained each document. "Mrs. Adams, you're lucid and capable. You can choose who manages your affairs." I looked at Grace. Then I wanted to be her. I signed, my hand trembling, but my heart steady. That day I learned that healing doesn't come from medicine. It comes from the courage to put yourself first. 2 days later, my children arrived together. Suits, expensive perfume, carefully arranged concern. Daniel carried an envelope. "Mom, the bank just needs your signature for a few payments." "Payments, nothing big, just routine stuff." I smiled. "That's fine. Grace handles that now." The silence that followed was heavy. Eric frowned. "You gave power of attorney to a neighbor." Grace replied, calm and sharp, "To a friend. The difference is, I come here without checking her balance first." Melissa crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous." "What's ridiculous," I said, "is being in a hospital bed while you talk about paperwork." They left angry. I was shaking, but inside, I felt something new, peace. When fear leaves, power finds a new address. That same day, Daniel sent a long message full of excuses. "Mom, we just wanted to help. You're vulnerable. Someone could take advantage of you." I replied briefly, "Someone did. From home." Eric called, shouting, "You're putting everything at risk." "Everything what, Eric?" "The trips, the reservations, the expectations." Silence. He hung up. Melissa posted an old photo of us with the caption, "My mom is my example of strength." I liked the post. The irony of modern life, even abandonment comes with a flattering filter. Being a mother sometimes means watching your children lie to themselves and pretending to believe them, just so you don't lose them completely. Grace arrived that afternoon with a folder, a smile, and a bottle of tea. "It's done. Everything, accounts, investments, the so-called trip, all paused." I took a deep breath. "They'll hate me, for a while, and after that, then they'll learn, or they won't. But you'll sleep in peace." I looked out the hospital window. The sun was setting slowly, gilding the buildings. I felt a sudden urge to be near the ocean. "Grace, what if I bought a small house by the beach, to rest, to start over?" That evening, the woman everyone saw as fragile began to plan her own rebirth. The house was silent, the kind of silence that no longer hurts, only lingers. Grace came early the next morning. She brought fruit, medicine, and a new notebook. She set it on the table and said, "Let's begin." "Begin what?" "Your list." I looked at her, puzzled. "List of what?" "Of everything you don't want to carry into your next chapter." I smiled wryly. "This feels like therapy." It is, just without the therapist, and with stronger coffee. I picked up the pencil. That first touch on paper brought fear. Fear of facing everything that had hurt me. But I began anyway. The messages that never came. I stopped writing. The pencil trembled in my hand. Grace stayed quiet, respecting my pace. The calls that came too late. The flowers that died before they bloomed. The promises that came with interest. The love I had to buy. With every item, my chest ached, and then eased. "Want me to read it?" Grace asked softly. I shook my head. "No, this one's just for me." "Then write what you do want to take with you." I thought for a moment. "Can I mix them?" "Of course. Life's a mix." I turned the page and wrote, "What stays? Hazel, the sea, the smell of bread in the morning, silence without guilt, the courage not to be a martyr." Grace smiled. "See, you still remember what real love is." Took me 60 years, still on time. I spent the next few hours filling both columns, between tears and laughter, between the good memories and the ones that burned, between the woman who had endured and the one learning to rise again. When I finished, I noticed a small coffee stain in the corner of the notebook. I stared at it and thought, not everything that stains ruins. Sometimes it just leaves a mark. By late afternoon, I carried the notebook out to the porch. The wind flipped the pages on its own, as if the world were trying to peek inside. Grace came out with 2 cups of tea. "All done?" "Not yet, but I know what the last item will be." "What is it?" "The new house, the one by the beach." I nodded. "No one can find me there unless I want to be found. But I still want to be found by those who truly look." Grace looked at me with pride and a hint of sadness. "Then that's it. The old Ruth stays here, and the new one begins there." Before bed, I tore out the first page, the one listing everything I no longer wanted to carry, and placed it in a small bowl. I struck a match. The flame rose slowly, orange and warm. Line by line, the words disappeared, and with them, the weight I'd been dragging for years. Burning the past doesn't erase the story. It lights the way for those finally ready to leave. The next morning woke with the smell of bread and sea salt. Even still in the old house, I could feel the wind changing. I opened the window and let the light in. The sun hit the living room mirror, casting a crooked glow on the wall. I stared at that streak of light. It seemed to nudge me, whispering, "Wake up." And I did. Not from sleep, but from a long emotional numbness. For the first time in months, I wanted to be alive. Grace showed up unannounced, carrying a paper bag. "Brought you something. More medicine, better popsicles." We laughed. She opened the bag, and the sweet scent of strawberry filled the room. We sat on the porch, savoring them like a feast. "You should see your face, Ruth." "Why?" "You're smiling. But not that polite Sunday lunch smile. It's a real one." I touched my face, surprised. I'd almost forgotten how that felt. "Then remember, you'll need it." While we ate, a boy rode by on his bike and called out, "Good morning, Miss Ruth." I smiled and waved. Grace grinned. "See, you're already famous. Famous for surviving." She laughed out loud, and without realizing it, I laughed too. The sound echoed across the porch light, unforced, guilt-free. Later, we went to the market. It was the first time in weeks I'd gone out without thinking about tests or medication schedules. The sun warmed my face. The breeze tangled my hair, and I caught myself humming an old tune in the fruit aisle. Grace stopped the cart and said, "Anyone watching would think you just won the lottery." I did. I won the right to stop caring about people who don't care about me. She clapped her hands, laughing, and by reflex, I laughed even harder. On the way back, we stopped at a small park. Children running, dogs playing, the smell of wet grass. I sat on a bench and closed my eyes. The sound of children's laughter ran through me like an old memory. Hazel, still little, running with her shoes on the wrong feet. Thinking about her, Grace asked. I am, but not with pain. With a sweet kind of longing. Grace nodded. That's how life tells you your heart is healing. Back home, at dusk, I sat on the porch with a mug of tea and watched the sky change colors. The sunset looked like watercolor, pink, orange, blue. I felt the urge to give thanks, not to anyone in particular, but to existence itself, and I whispered softly, "Thank you, time, for not taking me before I learned how to live." That night, I wrote in my new notebook, "Today I smiled." Not because I forgot what happened, but because I finally understood that surviving is also a form of revenge. I closed the notebook and fell asleep peacefully, without fear, without resentment, my body still weak, but my heart steady. Sometimes healing comes slowly, disguised as a hot cup of coffee, a strawberry popsicle, and an unexpected laugh. The days in the hospital dragged on until the doctor finally smiled and said, "You can go home, Mrs. Adams, but remember, no stress." I nodded. But what he didn't know was that stress doesn't live in illness, it lives in the ties that choke you. That same morning, Grace came in with the kind of look that says she already knows what's coming. "They scheduled the trip for tomorrow." "I know. And what are you going to do?" "Cancel everything." Grace smiled faintly. "Then, today's the day you start breathing again." While she handled the paperwork, I made the calls, the hotel, the airline, the bank, everything canceled, blocked, refunded. Each click was a breath of relief. Each email sent, a silent scream of independence. By afternoon, the phone started buzzing. Messages one after another. "Daniel, Mom, there's some problem with the payment for the trip." "Eric, the card didn't go through. What happened?" "Melissa, Mom, the resort says it's been canceled." "Was that you?" "Yes, it was me, but I didn't answer." Sometimes, the most elegant revenge is the silence of a woman who's finally learned to say no. The next morning, they arrived at the hospital for their big confrontation. But the room was empty, the bed was made, the ID bracelet left neatly on the pillow. The nurse told them, "Your mother was discharged last night, said she was going somewhere peaceful." The family group chat exploded. "Mom, where are you? This is irresponsible. You need to talk to us." I read every message, lying on a wooden bench on the porch of a new house. The sound of the ocean had become my new heartbeat monitor. Grace sat beside me, laughing. "They're going to lose it. Let them. For once, the panic isn't mine." When a hospital room empties, the weight of abandonment finally changes hands. I sent one single voice note to the group. I asked Grace to take care of what you never did me. "I'm fine. Don't look for me now. Take care of your own lives, and learn to care without depending on my bank account." Silence. Then the flood came. "This is manipulation. They're taking advantage of you, Mom. That woman's turning you against us." Grace folded her arms. "Predictable." I laughed. "They never listened to me before. Now that I finally speak, they think it's someone else." When a woman finds her voice, those who thrived on her silence call it madness. The house was small and white, with blue shutters and the smell of salt in the air. A little yard of hydrangeas, a gate that creaked. No luxury. But everything there was mine, including the peace. Grace arranged my medication in a basket. I made coffee. 2 cups, warm bread, a newspaper on the table. "You know what's strange?" I said. "What?" "Having time to hear my own thoughts without feeling guilty." She laughed. "Welcome to adulthood at 60. I began walking slowly along the beach, feeling the wind, sleeping without a buzzing phone beside me. And little by little, my body started thanking me for the rest. The body heals when the heart finally finds a new address. My children tried everything. Emotional messages, then thinly veiled threats. "Mom, you can't just change everything without telling us. This could end up in court. You're being manipulated." I replied just once, "You're wrong. I was manipulated for years. Now I'm just living." After that, I blocked the group. Grace celebrated with a bottle of wine. The most well-deserved family divorce of the year. We laughed. and toasted with cheap glasses, but expensive freedom. Sometimes the greatest inheritance a mother can leave is the example of knowing when to say enough. It took me a week to gather the courage to go into the water. I walked in slowly, up to my knees, the salt stinging my arms, the cold slicing the air. I closed my eyes and let the wave hit me. It was as if the sea whispered, "I've got it from here." For a moment, I wasn't a mother, or a provider, or a patient. I was just Ruth, alive, whole, and my own. When I came back to shore, Grace handed me a towel, ready to start over. "Grace, I think I already have. The sea gives back what the world takes if you have the courage to step in." I remember that first night in the beach house. The silence felt strange, not the heavy kind from before, but a silence with space in it, a silence that breathed with me. The windows were open, the sound of waves drifting in like a distant song. I lay on a simple bed, fresh sheets, and thought, this is how beginnings start, without applause, without witnesses, only courage. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Grace was already in the kitchen, humming an old tune. The smell of coffee mixed with sea breeze made me smile. "Sleep well?" she asked, for the first time. Yes. We had breakfast on the porch, the sky still pink, the waves breaking softly in the distance. I looked around, as if seeing my life again after years of being absent. "You know what it feels like, Grace?" "What?" "Like the house is hugging me." She smiled. "Then let it. The best kind of hug never needs an explanation." I remember those first days being slow, unpacking what was left after the move, deciding where to hang the pictures, choosing a spot for the radio. There was no hurry. Hurry had always been the enemy of my peace. Every morning, I walked barefoot on the sand. The wind tangled my hair, the salt clung to my skin, and with each step, I felt my body becoming mine again. One afternoon, I sat on the porch with my new notebook and began to write. Day 3 in the new house, still getting used to the sound of the sea at night, but I like the feeling that it's talking to me. I think this is the first time I've ever heard life without interference. I closed the notebook and watched the horizon. The ocean has no walls, and I didn't want to have any either. Grace, always practical, brought new plants. For good luck, I laughed. I think finding myself alive was luck enough. Then these are to keep it that way. We spent the afternoon planting together. Mint, basil, lavender, hands dirty with soil, hearts washed clean, and in the middle of our laughter, I realized the pain didn't hurt the same anymore. It was still there, but now it fit inside me, without spilling over. One morning, a mailman appeared. Delivery for Ruth Adams. I signed the slip and took the envelope. No return address. Inside, an old photograph, and on the back, a line written by hand. "You made us a family, even when we didn't know how to be your children." My heart raced. I recognized Daniel's handwriting, but I didn't cry. I simply pinned the photo to the wall, as someone who accepts the past, but doesn't invite it back in. Routine slowly found its shape. Coffee, reading, short walks, the ocean, as my background music. Sometimes Grace took me to the market, sometimes I went alone. I learned to buy only what I needed, and I discovered that what I needed was very little. At night, I liked to sit on the sand with a blanket, watching the lights of boats in the distance, each one following its own path, lighting its own way, like me. Sometimes I write in my journal, "I'm a woman who lost almost everything and found herself." I think that's a fair trade. One night, Grace asked me, "Do you miss them?" I thought before answering. I missed the idea I had of them, but the people they became, no, she nodded. Then, "Ruth, you're free," I smiled. The kind of smile that comes without pain, without fear, without shame. The kind that comes when your soul finally understands it survived. Freedom doesn't shout, it whispers. And its sound is the same as the sea against the shore, steady, calm, and endless. Weeks later, I heard knocking at the gate. When I opened it, a small blur ran toward me. Grandma, Hazel, the purest smile in the world. Behind her, a shy babysitter holding a backpack. "Does your mom know you're here?" "No, but I begged a lot." She threw her arms around me, holding tight. The smell of her shampoo completely unraveled me. "Grandma, why did you disappear?" "Mommy says you got mad." "No, sweetheart. I just got tired." "But are you coming back home?" "No. This is my home now." She looked around, eyes wide and shining. "Then I want to come here every weekend." Sometimes, true love climbs over the wall of lies and finds its way home on its own. Hazel spent the whole day with me. We painted seashells, made pancakes, read stories. Grace watched us, visibly moved. You know what she's learning, Ruth, what that tenderness is an inheritance too. When the babysitter came to pick her up, Hazel turned and said, "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be just like you." But without letting anyone make me cry that much, I froze. Her words came out clean, weightless, but they healed me in a way no medicine ever could. Sometimes, the love that heals comes from a 10-year-old's mouth. A few days later, Daniel showed up at the door, suit on, face tired. "We need to talk." Grace stayed nearby, arms crossed. "You shouldn't have done this, Mom, leaving everything behind, changing the papers, cutting us out." "I didn't cut you out. I just put myself back in. We're your family." Family is who stays when the body falls apart. And when mine did, the one who stayed was her. I pointed to Grace. Silence. He lowered his eyes. I didn't realize I was hurting you. You hurt me because I let you. But I don't let you anymore." Daniel left without saying goodbye. And for the first time, I didn't cry. Forgiveness begins when pain stops giving the orders. That night, I sat on the porch and began to write. "My children, I don't want revenge. I want respect. I paid for trips, parties, and bills, but I never bought love. Now I've learned that real affection can't be bought. It has to be grown. You'll harvest what you've planted. As for me, I have the sea. And the peace of knowing I survived everything, including you." I signed it, folded the paper, and tucked it away. Maybe I'll send it one day. Maybe I won't. Some truths only exist for those brave enough to write them. When a woman learns to write herself, no one can erase her story. It's late afternoon. Grace is making tea in the kitchen. Hazel's drawing on the porch. The sound of the waves drifts through the open window. I open my notebook and write. "They said I was sick, and I was sick from lack of love. The treatment was simple: distance, the ocean, and a friend who reminded me life was still here." My days with Hazel were filled with joy. I realize now that maybe healing is this, to keep loving, but without self-sacrifice. They left me alone. But in the end, I found myself. Hazel looked around, enchanted. "It's so small, but it smells like cookies. That's because I baked some. Without burning them this time." We laughed together. Her laughter filled the room, and for a moment, everything seemed back in its place. We sat on the porch. The sun hid behind the ocean, the sky painted in orange and violet. Hazel grew quiet, staring at the horizon. Then she turned to me. "Mom says you didn't want to see anyone." "That's not true. I just didn't want to see everyone." We sat in silence for a while. The sound of the waves hummed behind us. The breeze played with her hair. "Do you miss Mom?" she asked. I took a deep breath. I miss who she was. But missing doesn't mean I want her back the same way. Hazel nodded, far too serious for her age. "I think she misses you too. She cries when she thinks I'm not looking." I looked out at the sea. A mother's love is a wound that heals on the outside but stays open on the inside. "One day," I said, "she'll understand why I had to go." Some lessons a mother can only teach by leaving. Hazel rested her head on my shoulder. "Grandma, I don't want you to get old." "Too late, honey." "Then promise you'll never leave me." I held her little hand. "I can't promise that, but I can promise one thing." "What?" "That every time you feel lonely, and you hear the sea, I'll be there somewhere, listening to." She smiled, and a tear slid down her cheek. At the same moment, a wave crashed louder outside. The sound filled the silence that followed. Grace appeared with hot chocolate. Hazel ran to help her. The two of them laughed in the kitchen, and I watched from the porch, 3 generations of women, each marked in her own way, but all alive, whole, present. When Hazel came back, she handed me a mug. "I made it extra sweet, just how you like." "Perfect." She nestled into my lap, her hair smelling of sunshine and childhood. "Grandma, do you ever regret anything?" I looked ahead, the sea darkening. "Sometimes, but every time I start to regret, I remember this moment, and then, no." The sun set, the sky turned lilac. Hazel fell asleep in my arms, her hot chocolate forgotten on the table. I brushed her hair from her face, the same way I once did with her mother, and whispered, "Maybe this is what love is meant to feel like, quiet, gentle, and enough." Later, when Grace came to close the windows, I was still there. The sea kept beating, the wind kept moving, and I wrote in my notebook, "Today, life gave me back what it once took, a chance to love without being used." Hazel is the piece of my daughter the world couldn't ruin. And if anyone asks where I've gone, tell them I stayed right where I finally learned to be happy inside myself. I closed the notebook, and I smiled. The first smile without shadow, without longing, without fear. A smile of beginning again. It wasn't the sea that healed me. It was the calm of finally learning how to look at it without waiting for anyone to come back. And now tell me in the comments, where are you from, and what do you think about my story? I want to thank this channel, Buried by Family, for allowing me to share this part of my life with you. This channel needs your support to keep bringing more stories like this one. So, like this video, and click the subscribe button. That way, other women will also be able to share their truths here. On the screen, there's another video you might like, and the icon to subscribe to the channel.